As we reported a short time ago, the writing team of John Francis Daley and Jonathan M. Goldstein have been hired by Sony Pictures to write the script for the upcoming rebooted Spider-Man film. In a recent interview with NPR, they were asked about the personality of the new Peter Parker, to which they said the following. He's a sharp kid and witty and kind of deals with the fact that he's an outcast and geek through humor. It is sort of the safety net for geeks like us, so I think we can totally relate to where he's coming from. Mark, what do you make of their description of Peter Parker?
I think it's on the nose. It sounds exactly like the other Peter Parkers we've seen, whether it's Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield. Garfield's Spider-Man was a little bit better with the I'm awkward, so I'm going to use humor as a defense mechanism than Tobey Maguire's was, but that's the way that those various directors and scripts had that character. This sounds like the Peter Parker that we know and love. Now, will that make sense after whatever his role purportedly in Civil War is? And then we go to a standalone Spider-Man film where he is this shy, geeky guy who uses humor as a defense mechanism back in high school after mingling with these superheroes. That's the interesting thing to me, is how is this going to tie with the Spider-Man that we already saw on screen if we get to see him a lot in Civil War?
Yeah, I remember I was a big fan of the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man. Sam Raimi's second Spider-Man, one of the greatest comic book films of all time. But even in there, I never really sensed that humor from Spider-Man. Sometimes when the mask came on, he had moments of that humor, but we never really saw that as a natural part of who Peter Parker was. So it's almost like he became a different person. And Peter Parker isn't really like that. He doesn't become a different person with his alter ego. And so hearing them talk about Peter Parker, that he's really going to embrace that part of him, the humor, maybe even probably self-deprecating humor a lot as a part of his defense mechanism for being the socially outcast guy, I think that's really right on target. And as much as I loved Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and loved Mark Webb's first Amazing Spider-Man film, that's also one thing I thought they could have probably done a little bit better. So hearing that they're at least aiming for that, they might miss completely, but at least they're aiming for the right target, and that gives me some sense of hope.
Yeah, I agree. I really want them to be able to integrate both Peter Parker and Spider-Man into being the one character that he is, and especially recently how he's written. It's like, I think the humor is a giant part of the Spider-Man character, and him being able to jump around and say stuff to like throw the villains off is part of what was fun about the comic book, reading the comic book. So I think this pair, having not seen Vacation yet, I'm still hopeful that they're going to be able to nail it. And and hearing that it's like that Kevin Feige wants it to be in that John Hughes sense of humor. I don't think he's going to have a giant role in Civil War. Spider-Man will be there. He'll do some stuff. And I think that's going to be the dichotomy of it's just a kid. That's going to freak people out when they see someone doing all these fantastic things that only a superhero can do. And he pulls his mask off and he goes to he's a freshman in high school. You're going to be like, what?
Yeah, what's exciting when I read that quote is that because the other two Spider-Men that we dealt with, we had to sit through an entire origin story in each one of those. And that origin story gets dark. I mean, his uncle gets murdered brutally. And so he's got to deal with all those emotions. Now, maybe if there's a little bit of separation between that tragic event and what he's going through now, he can start to use humor again. So we maybe see that infiltrate its way into the film earlier on than we did in the previous incarnations.
What if, just throwing this out there, I don't know how angry this will make some people. We say, hey, making movies, you should probably make it a little bit more your own. And especially if you're rebooting something, put your own personal touches on. What if Uncle Ben ain't dead? What if Uncle Ben never died? And like Marissa Tomei is that right now. But what if we hear, and we know how much of a connection Spider-Man has with, who's the guy who plays Ash?
Oh, Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, what if Bruce Campbell is actually going to come back into the Spider-Man franchise, even though it's not Sam Raimi, and he's Uncle Ben?
I'll tell you this. When Aunt May looks like Marissa Tomei, there's always going to be another Uncle Ben lining up at the door. Right. There's going to be no shortage of male figures.
Maybe
in
Uncle
your
Ben
life.
is like the code name. Uncle Ben's here tonight, Peter. You shouldn't be around. Okay, I get it.
Are you my new Uncle Ben? Yeah. And Aunt May's like, stop calling Frank new Uncle Ben.
I told you it was a code. It was a code name between us.